About once every year, we get a relatively unknown yet unique anime that leaves a lasting impression and gradually becomes something really special. Shows that I would consider to be true hidden gems. Orb, Sunny Boy, Odd Taxi. These are all past examples of shows that exceeded everyone's expectations and were highly underrated as they aired. Now in 2025, we have the short 6-episode absolute masterpiece that is known as Taco P's Original Sin. We may not have gotten a full 12-episode season, but within those 2.5 hours, I would argue the show did more in that time than 95% of anime out there. And the stuff they did? Well, let's just say it's keeping my therapist employed. Now before we get into the show, I have to warn you guys, this anime does portray some very disturbing things, so if you get triggered by stuff like abuse and self-harm, you may want to click away from this video. This is Taco P, an alien that landed on Earth from the planet Happy, and as a Happian, their whole race exists to spread happiness and positivity everywhere they go. So when Taco P meets this girl named Shizuka who gave them food when they needed it most, Taco P wanted to repay Shizuka for her kindness, unknowingly causing a string of very bad events because of it. But you didn't need me to tell you that. You probably already had a feeling with the suspiciously cute art style and the adorable main character. If that wasn't enough, then this trigger warning shown at the start of every episode would have hinted that this anime was going to be a little dark. Shizuka has what I like to call a fucked up life. Her mom is an escort and her dad is... well, let's just say the last few Father's Days have been kind of awkward, which means that she doesn't have any support systems in her life other than her dog Chappie, and now she has her new friend Taco P. But Taco P, being an innocent little alien, doesn't know much about Earth or humans in general. Even the most basic things like the concept of school has to be taught, so of course topics that are much more complex like morals and human emotions are difficult to grasp for them. Because of how Happians were raised, they never had to deal with bullying or trauma or anything negative for that matter. So Taco P just makes up their own conclusions and tries whatever they can to bring a smile to Shizuka's face, usually in the form of introducing happy gadgets. It's a very sweet and innocent gesture, but that same childlike innocence is what actually hurts the people Taco P loves. After days of meeting up with Shizuka, she one day comes to Taco P bruised and battered with Chappie's collar in hand, and she says she got into a fight with her friend. Any normal person could tell that something very bad has happened to Shizuka and probably her best friend Chappie as well. But Taco P is like, oh, human faces get decorated when you get into a fight with your friends, huh? And I think this exact moment is when I realized this is what makes Taco P's Original Sin so special.
There's no shortage of gut-wrenching scenes in this anime, but as an observer, what's just as bad and sometimes even worse than the horrific things being done to Shizuka is how Taco P will react to them. You know Taco P doesn't understand the situation whatsoever, and the frustrating aspect is that you can't fault them for not knowing much because they're an alien. The conflicting part is that you want to protect Taco P's innocence from these very bad things, but at the same time, you kinda hope that they experience some of it so that they can learn about the horrible things humans can do to themselves and each other. Which is exactly what happens when Taco P gives Shizuka the reconciliation ribbon, a happy gadget that's strong and can stretch to infinity. It's against the rules for a Happian to give a happy gadget to an alien or use it without supervision, but Taco P completely trusts Shizuka won't misuse it, so they hand it to her and wait for her to come back. Except she never does. So Taco P goes to Shizuka's house to check in on her, and he finds...
Shizuka-chan? Shizuka-chan, 何やってるんだっぴ？そのリボンは柱に結びつけてもしょうがないっぴよ。Shizuka-chan? Shizuka-chan? 死んだ?
It's very difficult to stomach this scene, not only because of the situation, but also because Taco P couldn't immediately comprehend what had happened to Shizuka, even though to us, it's so painfully obvious. And it's only after her lifeless body hits the ground does Taco P realize Shizuka is dead. She killed herself. So in order to try to make things right as best they can, Taco P pulls out a happy gadget camera that allows them to go back to a point in time a picture was taken and makes it their goal to create a future where Shizuka doesn't have to die. But in order to do that, Taco P has to understand the reasons why she doesn't want to live. And one of the biggest reasons is her. Marina is Shizuka's classmate and bully. She makes Shizuka's life a living hell every day by tormenting her endlessly for seemingly no reason at all. She's an absolutely terrible person, and as the viewer, you absolutely despise her existence. You hate her for what she does to Shizuka. So in order to protect her, Taco P uses one of their gadgets to transform into Shizuka and take her place when Marina tells Shizuka to meet her in the back during lunch, naively thinking they can make the situation a lot better. Spoiler alert, they can't. and Takopi ends up having to tank some of the abuse that Shizuka gets every day, not even understanding what and why this is all happening to them. In this interaction, we learn that Marina's dad is one of the customers of Shizuka's escort mom, and because of that relationship, it's tearing Marina's family apart, which is causing Marina's life to slowly crumble as she knows it. So without being able to take her anger and frustrations out on her parents or any of the adults, she rationalizes that Shizuka's mom is only a prostitute because she has to take care of Shizuka. So she takes it out on the person that's causing all of the issues. It's definitely a big reach by Marina, and you might think this is also stupid to be doing all this for that reason, but I wouldn't go so far to call it unrealistic. It's not unreasonable for Marina to lash out at the one person she's pinpointed as the root of her problems. Kids do that all the time when their life at home sucks. But then that begs the question, how bad is Marina's life at home? Turns out, it's pretty bad. This more gray area that the anime tiptoes on is exactly what makes this anime so compelling. It challenges the beliefs we held so firmly at the beginning and shakes it to its very core to make us rethink who the real villains are. As the show goes on, you see children, the symbol of purity and innocence, commit some of the most heinous acts. Acts that a lot of people will consider to be absolutely unforgivable, but everybody has their own reasons for doing so. And I really like that this anime highlights these characters' traumatic experiences without using them as crutches for them to fall on. Rather, they're used to explain why they behave the way they do. It's used to show how warped a person's mind can be if nobody checks in on them. Marina is the perfect example. We're not expected to forgive her for what she's done to Shizuka, but when we see that her mom has been doing horrible things to her, we understand that Marina is also a victim as well. And what I love about this anime is how they treat all trauma with the same level of respect, whether it's the absence of parents, the abuse by a parent, or even being overly parented. They're all seen under the same lens and taken very seriously. We often fall into this trap of downplaying our own traumatic experiences when we compare them to what others have gone through because what they went through sounds worse. And they seemingly made it out just fine. But this show excellently portrays the wide spectrum of traumatic experiences and lets us know that everyone's trauma matters, and they all need to be taken seriously, even if the circumstances surrounding them aren't as severe as others.
Another thing that makes the anime so addicting to watch in my opinion is the lack of heroes. It's bleak like nothing I've ever seen before, and I didn't know why until I thought about it. There's not really a hero you can pinpoint in the show. At the beginning, you might think it's Takopi because they're the X Factor. They're a completely unknown alien species and we have no idea what they can do or what kind of gadgets they have up their sleeve. But as the story progresses and you learn how bad the circumstances are for these characters, you take a look at what Takopi has to offer in their inventory. And once you realize the best thing Takopi has is a happy gadget with a 15-pound weight limit, this sense of dread and hopelessness invades your mind. It's fucked for them, and there's nothing anyone can do to help. And because there's nothing anyone can do, you're glued to the screen wondering what's gonna happen next. Shizuka, Marina, and Osma are all kids that know far too much, far too soon. They're a byproduct of their environment, a reflection of their parents' very worst tendencies, negligence personified as children that are part of a society that only pretends to care about them. Takopi, on the other hand, is a blank slate that's too oblivious to be mentally scarred, impervious even to emotional damage as they can't even begin to comprehend what's actually taking place. But just because Takopi doesn't know what's going on doesn't mean they can't learn. You can see this in episode 2 when they see Marina mercilessly beating Shizuka to a pulp. Takopi knows what it feels like to be struck by Marina. It's painful and confusing at the same time, and they understand that they have to do something in order for her to stop. The question is what? I'm not gonna lie, seeing Marina get one shot by Takopi's camera was kinda satisfying cause both Shizuka and I have been praying for times like this, and I'm sure a lot of people share that same sentiment. But that's the exact issue this series wanted to highlight. Finding someone to blame for a certain issue without full context is what led to Marina bullying Shizuka, and in turn, her own downfall. It's what caused this spiral of hatred and suffering, pulling innocent people along when it never had to get there in the first place. And that's exactly what happens when Osma bumps into Shizuka and finds out Marina is dead. He tries telling her this is all wrong and she needs to turn herself in, but like a switch flipped inside her, Shizuka begins to exhibit some signs of a manipulator and convinces him to help her hide the body. Now, a lot of people, including myself, were a bit confused as to why Osma would do a complete 180 of what he just told Shizuka. It seems so unrealistic how he could convert into the biggest simp in record time, until we understand more of his background. You see, Osma is the second son to a family that runs a reputable clinic. His older brother Junior is the golden child of the family as he's the smartest kid in town, acing every single exam and test given to him with flying colors. And their mother holds Osma to those same standards with the promise of homemade pancakes if he reached those same heights. The pancakes aren't really what Osma wants, but they're a symbol of his mother's acceptance. And they've been dangled in front of his face as often as they've been taken away, as he constantly does well on his tests and gets close to reaching his brother's scores, yet he never quite hits that perfect mark. So because of all this pressure that Osma's mother and even Osma himself has put on him, it leads him to view Junior on a pedestal, sometimes not even seeing him as a brother but an unattainable goal, an untouchable being. The fact that Osma could never live up to his mother's expectations meant that he wasn't needed by someone close to him, so naturally, he got excited and latched onto the first person that did rely on him and said, "I need you," because he finally felt like he was genuinely wanted. And what follows is what I consider to be this anime's greatest depiction, the complete breakdown of Osma's mental state. Marina's body is discovered by the police, and now the chances that our cast of characters are caught is a lot higher. As Osma wrestles with his thoughts about doing the right thing and confessing to the police, Shizuka insists they stick with the plan of going to Tokyo to get her dog back. Osma, not wanting to let her down, agrees to make it all work, but the thoughts continue to plague his mind and we begin to see his slow descent to madness as his life begins falling apart, starting with the 54 he scored in his test. That's when Osma's mom gives him the beautifully delicious pancakes he's always wanted. She's noticed that he's been having a rough time, that life hasn't been so easy lately. So she gives him the pancakes to show him that she's been noticing his efforts, the late night studying, and that she's there for him. Osma starts to break down as he finally feels like his mom is recognizing him. And right as he's about to tell her everything that's been going on, she says, "I've given up on you. It's clear that you're not going to meet my expectations, so I'm gonna stop caring and give the pancakes to you because you're not even worth worrying about." And that's when this beautiful plate of hot pancakes that we've been seeing all this time turns into a disgusting pile of cold garbage. Like we mentioned earlier, the pancakes were never the real goal. It was just the validation he wanted from his mother. Some people might say Osma's parents setting these unrealistic expectations were over-exaggerated, but I have to disagree. I think Osma's struggle to get recognition from his parents was probably the most realistic and relatable issue in this entire series, and their portrayal of emotional trauma was probably the best I've ever seen.
Now of course we have to talk about one of the most impactful scenes from the final episode, where Shizuka finally breaks down and lets all her emotions out. Throughout the anime, Shizuka has been a pretty monotone and emotionless character, even holding back when she ends up kicking the chair in the first episode. But after a long trip back from Tokyo, Taco P stops Shizuka in her path, telling her she doesn't want to make other people sad. It'll make Taco P and herself sad too. And this is the first time Taco P stood up to Shizuka and had a talk with each other about what they're feeling, which is what causes Shizuka to let everything out. What was I supposed to do when my dad pretended I was a stranger? What was I supposed to do when my mom stopped coming home? What was I supposed to do when everyone got mad at me because of Chappie's barking? What was I supposed to do when I was asked where my parents were? How was I supposed to handle all this alone? And it's when these questions get asked does the message of Taco P's original sin become clear. Taco P never tried to talk to Shizuka about any of her problems, instead opting to fix things the best way they knew how. What if all of this could have been prevented if Taco P just sat down with Shizuka and had a conversation to try and understand her? What if Shizuka just needed someone to talk to? Someone to be there for her because she was lonely and didn't have anyone besides her dog who she lost? What if she just needed someone to listen? I think this often happens in relationships where one person comes with a problem and the other person looks to find solutions to fix it immediately, when really, they were just looking to vent. I've been guilty of this myself quite often, but I've realized, sometimes what helps even more than finding solutions to the problem is actually listening to the person, to be someone they can talk to. And that's the message this anime wants to convey to us. In a time where communication is at our fingertips and connecting with each other is easier than it's ever been, we seem to be more distant and unclear than ever. But when an amazing show that had a compelling story, beautiful art, and impactful music reminds us of the simple yet important message to communicate and be there for one another, I can't help but think Taco P's original sin is a masterpiece. Shows like this are why I love watching anime, and this was an experience I'll never forget for the rest of my life. If you made it this far, I appreciate you for sticking around. We'll see you guys in another video. Peace.